This is Sarnia Lambton Daily for Wednesday, April 29th. Good evening, I'm Terry Doyle. The number of new cases of COVID-19 in the region and the number of people who have recovered from the virus increased by the same number since the last update. 181 people have now been diagnosed with the virus in Sarnia Lambton, up 3 as of the last update. Meanwhile, 87 people are considered recovered. That is also an increase of 3 people. A small batch of 73 test results came back in the last 24 hours, 70 of those tests coming back negative. The region has seen fairly steady numbers lately. Could this mean we are ready for a downward trend? The local medical officer of health is optimistic, but still quite cautious.
I hope so, but I would also say that outbreaks sometimes have a way of surprising us. So I would be careful about saying for sure that that's happening until it's actually happened, because there's the downslope, but there's also I think what's going to happen is that rather than this sustained sort of focus on this, that now we can maybe allow our focus to shift along with how the cases are coming in towards more prevention mechanisms with other community partners. So, I would say it's still a big issue for us, but I think that over time, what's happening with COVID in terms of both the outbreak and the attention around it is that it's sort of moving into this sort of I describe it as sort of waves. It's coming up and down. And so there are times when something comes up about it, there's a new interest or a new side topic that's relevant to COVID, and we try to talk about it or discuss it, and then there's a bit of a valley again, right? And I think that's normal. I think that's important. I don't think anybody can carry on at the level of intense effort and attention that has been paid to this topic for such a long period of time.
Let's check in now with Dave Brown, Executive Director of the United Way of Sarnia Lambton. Dave, we've seen a lot of federal announcements recently mentioning United Way, mentioning federal funding. Give us sort of a background, what's sort of going on in that area and how is that going to impact things locally?
Good evening, Terry. You're right. The Prime Minister announced about a month ago that $9 million would be shared amongst United Ways all across Canada. But specifically, that funding is going to be used for seniors funding, decreasing isolation and depression, but also increasing basic necessities of life. Food, a little bit of online counseling, that kind of thing. So our portion in Sarnia is $50,530. So we're extremely grateful to the federal government to have confidence in the United Way, and in particular through the New Horizons program to funnel that amount of money to us. And we're just going through the evaluation process now locally. We've received 8 or 9 applications for funding through that program. And that program is specifically to fund agencies and programs, not seniors directly. So we're going through the evaluation process, and we hope to have next week our announced grants. And then more recently, just in the last 10 days or so, the Prime Minister also announced $350 million to be shared amongst the United Way of Canada for all the United Ways in Canada, the Community Foundations of Canada, which will also funnel its way through to the Sarnia Community Foundation and to the Red Cross of Canada. So we're really excited to be working with those partners, the Red Cross, which we've, of course, been funding for many years for the Homeward Bound program, Meals on Wheels, and transportation, but also now as a funding opportunity. And we've always had a great relationship with the Sarnia Community Foundation. So we're really excited to be working with them locally. We don't know how much money that will translate into each of us, or certainly into Sarnia Lambton. But we're excited about working with those groups. We've already had one Zoom meeting, just kind of to share information, knowing that there were some things that I would know through United Way Canada that maybe the others didn't. And certainly Jane from Community Foundation, Sarnia Community Foundation, knew a few things that I didn't know. So it was great to share that, and we'll be getting together probably at least once a week, sharing information, what we know. But the other key component that the federal government wanted us to ensure was that there's no duplication of funding. In other words, an agency may be receiving funding from United Way and for the Sarnia Community Foundation for the same program. So clearly our lines of operation will continue to be open, as we've always really shared information locally.
You mentioned that seniors funding and going through the applications over the next few more days and maybe next week. In general, is it looking at where maintaining those programs there and, of course, enhancing some where isolation is an issue right now?
Certainly maintaining programs is key, but a lot of the programs are finding an increased need for services. For example, I know you've had Donna Martin on in previous episodes from the Family Counseling Center talking about the increased call volume they're getting. So certainly, I mean, that would be the type of program we would look at. But there's other agencies that are still providing their service, but in a different way. We're doing some video conferencing, for example. Some agencies are doing some online seminars and webinars. So it's adapting the way they do business as well as the increased need.
Now, this is, of course, new funding coming along, but for you, it's been busy times since, I think we're, 5 weeks into it right now with the Compassion Fund locally. Things have been very busy. I know you've been announcing, seems to be every few days or at least a couple a week, agencies that have been funded through this Compassion Fund.
I'm really proud of some of the work and some of the funding we've been able to do locally with the Compassion Fund. We're going to be announcing tomorrow our 16th and 17th Compassion funding. And I'll share that with you. I'll give you a bit of an exclusive on that shortly. But about half of the programs and agencies that we're funding are not previously funded by the United Way. So I'm really proud of the fact that it's a wide scope. We're casting a wide net of funding, meeting basic needs, including safety and mental health in our community. And I'm also impressed with the speed in which our board of directors is able to analyze the recommendations and make approvals. And in many cases, if not all cases, an agency could apply for funding one day. We get the approval notices out to the board the following day, and quite often 24 to 30 hours after that, the agency actually has the funding. So we know that speed and flexibility is important, but at the same time, we're very concerned and know that we want to provide some accountability to our donors. And at the end of when this is all over, we'll give all of our donors a good rundown of what exactly we did with all that funding and what were the outcomes, what were the measures that we know we did good, some good work in the community and some good results rather than just put money into programs and services.
And is the key here, because you mentioned some of these are funded agencies from United Way, some are separate, but I guess looking at the funded agencies, this isn't topping up existing funding. This is looking at some new initiatives or additional costs that have been incurred because of the pandemic.
Absolutely. And some are actually adjusting their services a little bit. For example, the Boys and Girls Club was one of the agencies that we do currently fund that have requested and received compassion funding. What they're experiencing is a lot of the children that they have, typically for after-school drop-ins, which we fund, are not coming because, of course, the school day is canceled. They have isolation issues at the Seaway Kiwanis building, or the Golden Gate Kiwanis building, community center. And so what they're finding is those children don't have access to those nutritional programs that they typically would after school. So now they're working with families and making sure that they get the meals that they need or the nutrition that they need while at home, while practicing that social isolation and not having to go to the center. So you're right. It's a combination of increasing need for service, doing their work differently, and in some cases adjusting what their actual work is.
No, it sounds like certainly busy times. And are you already hearing feedback? I think the first funding probably went out 4 weeks ago, something like that. Are you already hearing some news coming back in terms of the results?
We're hearing some great news, and that's what's really, I think, motivating. You're right, it's been busy, but it's been a good kind of busy. Seeing the comments and Facebook posts and even comments on Sarnia Lambton Daily on your TV from the agencies who have received money and impressed by how quick the turnaround was, that makes you feel good. But I've also personally gotten some phone calls from some of the clients and some of the members of these programs who are actually getting help, that are actually seeing the money doing good in their own personal lives and their families. And I've got some of the messages that I've still got on my phone, and it's terrific that those folks are calling up and just giving their positive personal feedback. So it's from all over, agencies, Other United Ways are also taking note of what we're doing here. United Way of Canada certainly is noticing what we're doing. And one of the other things we wanted to do, and you touched on this briefly, is we want to let the donors know, keep them up to date on where the funding is going. Sure, we could do news releases every week or every 2 weeks, but we think it's important to give the community a running scorecard of exactly where that money is being used.
If you could talk to Dave Brown 5 weeks ago to Dave Brown today, when you opened this and when your staff and the board came together to start the fund, are you amazed of how much it's come together and how people have come forward? Because I've got to think Dave Brown 5 weeks ago really probably wasn't sure how this was going to play out.
You're absolutely right. When we first talked about the Compassion Fund with the board, we talked about self-funding the program by with $18,000, which we've done. And we were looking at contingency plans with our own operations, with our budget, to see how we can add to that, or if it's possible, we can add to that. But fortunately, the community has really stepped up. We've had a number of donors, individuals, step up and make, in some cases, some very generous contributions to the fund. About half of the donors that donated to the United Way Compassion Fund have never donated to the United Way before. So we're really excited that they've got new confidence in the United Way, and they're taking note on how we're so reactive in our community to meet common issues. But also from a corporate level. I mean, when we look at Libro Credit Union and Tricar and what Scotiabank has done, and I know there's a couple of other companies that are looking at giving us advancements to the fall campaign to help us with cash flow. It's super impressive to see the community at all levels step up and support the Compassion Fund. I think after we announce today or tomorrow, we would have allocated $84,000 to 17 different agencies, and there's still about $15,000 left in the fund to meet even new agencies. And we received another new application today that we're just starting to go through the approval process. So, yeah, the community buy-in from all levels is very impressive, and once again, I'm very proud of the Sarnia Lambton community where we live.
Is it a case you talk about the advancement and I guess towards the fall campaign? That's of course another hill that's going to be a challenge moving forward at some point. Obviously kind of have to get through this current pace, but it's got to be nice to at least know you've got companies like that looking to kind of give you those options, like an advancement now, knowing the fall campaign is still such an important thing.
You're right. The advancement coming in for the cash flow is vital for our confidence in the campaign, but it also gives us their commitment for this year's fall campaign, which is one of my biggest concerns. We last year raised $1.9 million to fund 18 agencies, 36 local programs and services. It's going to be a big challenge this fall. And for any organization that gives us an advancement on this fall's campaign as an indicator to us that they're solid behind United Way, they're very supportive, and they know that once this pandemic is past us, we still have those original needs in our community, whether it's counseling needs or youth services, family services, and so on.
Now, before we let you go, you said there are a couple more announcements coming up here. You've got some more agencies that'll be getting some funding.
Right. We're going to be announcing tomorrow, so it's a bit of an exclusive here on your TV and Sarnia Lambton Daily. We'll be announcing tomorrow $5,000 to River City Vineyard to purchase cleaning supplies, personal hygiene supplies, etc., for a lot of the clientele that they have in their shelter and some other needs. And we're also going to be announcing tomorrow $5,000 for the YMCA resource houses. Now, again, the resource houses may be an opportunity for school children to get not only homework help, but a nutritional snack, whether it be breakfast or dinner. Again, much like the Boys and Girls Club clientele, but it's different segments of the community in different locations. They're wanting to make sure that those children aren't doing without and are still getting at least one nutritious meal. They're being homeschooled. Now the YMCA and the youth resource houses are looking at getting them youth nutrition as well, if that's a term I can use.
That makes sense. And Dave, we certainly appreciate the heads up. And hey, it's great to see once again organizations and everyone in the community coming together to help out each other during this pandemic. Dave, always great to see you. We'll catch up again soon.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Terry.
There's Dave Brown, Executive Director, United Way of Sarnia Lambton. Back with more in a moment on Sarnia Lambton Daily on your TV. Welcome back to Sarnia Lambton Daily. One of the biggest challenges right now facing everyone dealing with this pandemic is about a vaccine and when it will become available. Recently, a group of Canadian researchers were recognized for their work towards a vaccine. Our colleagues at Your TV North Bay caught up with one of them, and we wanted to bring you that interview.
Joining me now is Dr. Roderick A. Slavchev out of the University of Waterloo, and you become a bit of an overnight sensation, at least in regards to national media, because of what you're embarking on. You're trying to find a vaccine for the coronavirus, COVID-19. How did you embark on this initially?
Well, this was it's a University of Waterloo endeavor, and it's with a few colleagues of mine. We essentially sat down and figured out that if we were to collaborate and bring our various expertise to the table, there's a real possibility in the designing of something that we believe that can be an expedited solution, and we could get into the hands of patients to address the COVID-19 problem and even potentially future epidemics that might arise from coronaviruses.
What are the first steps? How do you begin this research into this virus, which has caused so much heartache really around the world?
Well, I mean, I guess what happens is you realize that if the capabilities are present and we have the abilities to do something about it, well, then you meet up with the right people and you just decide to go for it. And you have a passionate crew like I do. I have a great team, as do the colleagues that I'm working with, Doctors O'Coin and Ho, and everyone was on board. And it happened essentially overnight. We just sat down, got this thing designed, figured out exactly what the best approach was to go about doing it. And we're already up and running, getting this going. We got the labs open, already very active as best as possible, obviously taking into account all the safety measures that have to be in place. And we're off to the races. And it's driven by passion and need, and that's how it should be. We're just rising to the urgency of the situation.
How does one develop a vaccine? What kind of studies do you embark on? What kind of things are you looking at? What kind of models are you looking at to try to counteract what COVID-19 does to people?
Well, I have a bit of a background experience on vaccine development, and a lot of my background is in genetics and microbiology. So it's a little bit of an area that's familiar to me. And you know what's out there, and we have a good sense of what the available scenarios are, and we just lend to what are the internal capabilities of what we believe that we can do best, and how we can design something that draws on a lot of the literature and what's been done, and figures out how can we novelly do something that we believe is better, more durable, and more universal across the board.
Dr. Slavchev, you're working with two other doctors. Are they also from the University of Waterloo? Is that your team?
Yes, that's right. That's Dr. Emmanuel Ho and Dr. Mark O'Coin. So one is a chemical engineer, that's Dr. O'Coin, and the other is a formulation specialist in chemistry, as well as in a lot of different areas in pharmaceutics and pharmacy applications, as well as bioengineering. So we've got a really cool and cross-disciplinary team to be able to tackle this from a number of different perspectives, which makes it not only exciting, but highly rewarding as well.
You're not the only group trying to develop a vaccine, as you're well aware. Are you in any contact with any other scientists in other cities or other countries who are embarking on this?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of contact, and a lot of this happens just by virtue of literature and a lot of sort of, pieces that go out, learning from others. Anytime, this is what's really cool, and what I'm really thrilled about seeing in Canada, it's not a matter of a race of who gets to it first. It's a matter of getting this done and finding a solution as fast as possible, and seeing all the other investigators across the country rising up and taking action against this. That's the way it should be, and it's a cool thing to see. It's the way it's a great thing to see. So yes, this is a collaborative effort nationally, is the way I see it.
There has been some progress. You're getting some good early results. How are you getting those results, the positive ones?
Well, this is all based on a platform that we had derived. I have two different companies that have spun out of my lab based on some of our previous research. We're DNA specialists. So Metaphage Bioceuticals is one of those companies that has a new approach and a new vector that can be a very safe and effective way of being able to deliver DNA. So we drew on what those capabilities were, as well as a new delivery vector that is highly novel using a bacteriophage through another company, Theraphage. And putting those together, it just made a significant platform that we believe can just draw on all the necessary immunological pieces to do something not only different, but more effective than what has been done previously.
Dr. Slavchev, there's also been a lot of, I guess, concern, worry about timeframes, development timeframes. Some people say it takes years to develop a vaccine. Some say it could take as little as a year. Can you put a clock on it, or is that too difficult?
It is difficult. I mean, everything's really based on the necessary testing. To alleviate some of those fears, I think the best way to look at it is that a lot of the regulatory hurdles that are in place, although expedited at present to be able to get something into the hands of people who need it, they're necessary. And having these safety measures in place is a very important part to make sure that no matter what is developed and by whom, that it is appropriately tested in all the various and right areas to ensure that it is a safe vaccine for any further usage. So that does add time, of course, but it is important.
Do animals get tested first and then humans? How do you progress?
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, animals are a necessary part of the equation, and we do have to move into preclinical trials, and that's part of it. I mean, we assume that we'll be completed all of that by April 2021. That's the sort of expedited clock, and we have all hands on deck, commercial and academic at this point. Everyone worked toward the same end. After that, there is a sort of expedited clinical approach, and that's why we also have engaged some of our commercial partners to try to move that forward as fast as possible.
And let's discuss how you want to apply said vaccine to those people that want to, prevent getting this or maybe get cured of it.
If you're talking about the administration approach, I mean, one of the things that we're really happy about here is that we're looking at a non-invasive approach, which serves really three very important angles. One, it's the best way to get the vaccine to the necessary cells that are affected by SARS-CoV-2 on the respiratory tract through the nasal tissue. Secondly, it's non-invasive, which is definitely a plus. And the third is that there's very important immune tissue within the nasal cavity, which lends itself towards a very potent and important immune response toward the end of a viral vaccine such as this.
So we're talking about a spray.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of people talked about, I've been reading a little bit about this today and in the past, about having your study peer reviewed. I'm assuming that means other physicians, other professors, doctors are going to examine or do their own testing?
Peer review is just a really important part of everything that we do in academia. We have to make sure that, and if you look at it, especially for an urgency, particularly like COVID-19, it's not just a matter of saying it's an okay approach. It's also adding additional benefits so that you get the best expertise from all those who are looking at it to ensure that everything that we do is not only okay to pursue forward, but also to ensure that we are doing it in the best and most cost-effective way.
Do you feel any added pressure given to develop this, given what's going on in the world, what's going on in Canada right now, and the entire globe?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's enormous pressure. As a team, we're working, very long days, and we're already off to the races, doing our best to expedite this. And yes, there's an urgency involved. The only thing I can say is it is as tiresome as it is rewarding and exciting. Not to diminish, obviously, how important a situation this is and the suffering that is being caused by COVID-19. But as a scientist, it's a calling for us that it's an important situation. It's an important and very rewarding situation for us to be able to rise up and to do something about this and to be able to help as best we can.
Stay tuned, more to come on Sarnia Lambton Daily right after this. Before we go tonight on Sarnia Lambton Daily, coming up, of course, this weekend, it is the first weekend of May, and many community gardens are expected to be available, but we do expect to see guidelines coming out from municipalities and public health about appropriate physical distancing to remain safe as we battle COVID-19. That's going to do it for our show tonight. For all of us here at Your TV, I'm Terry Doyle. Have a good rest of your Wednesday. We will see you back here tomorrow.